It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. You know, someone has said to me, Ray, what about the Canon Financials? You haven't shared anything about Canon. Folks, I went through the Canon Financials. Very interesting stuff. Canon's year for 2020 ended in December. They're actually halfway through 2021. It'll be interesting to see where they end up at the end of June. Maybe we can find that out in August. But when I went back and I looked at 2020, there was some interesting things that I ran across. And folks, you know, these OEMs, they're just like all the rest of them. Let me get on my sharp interactive board here. I got my magic pen in my hand. Let's talk about some of these things. The first thing is Canon, you know, they got the 96-page document, you know, go through these 96 pages. It's a little complicated. You know, they got the trillions of yens. You got to, you know, dissect all that, translate it back to dollars, all kinds of things to do and read. But one thing that's interesting about it is they have their aspirations for the year 2025. In Canon's case, they want to increase their revenue by about $10 billion. They want to increase their net profit. They want to have an 8% net profit. They haven't had an 8% net profit. I went back 10 years. Never once did they have an 8% net profit. So it'll be interesting to see how they're going to do that by the year 2025. Because, you know, COVID wasn't back in 2011. People weren't wearing masks. You know, people were buying copiers more than they are today, right? We were still overspeccing and overselling A3s, but we've seen declines all the way from 2011 to the current year, 2020. And we need to pay attention to these declines, and we need to start asking some questions. Like, one is, how in the hell are you going to do something you've never done before in an ever-changing marketplace that was struck with an evolutionary event called a global pandemic, which made all the customers of the document image channel fully aware they don't need to print as much today as they did yesterday, right? We all know that. And so, folks, when I'm looking at the Canon Financials, they're like the other OEMs. They have their business units, right? So they describe these business units they have. Office business unit is all the print business. So think about the office business unit as all the print business. That represents 45.6% of Canon's business. They also have the imaging systems business unit. That's the camera business, okay? Canon cameras, photography. That represents 22.5% of Canon's overall business. They also have the medical systems business, and that represents 13.8%. And then they have the industrial and other business unit, which represents 20.7% of their business. But ladies and gentlemen, for the most part, Canon's a copier company, right? 46% of their business comes from print and print-related supplies, print equipment. Now, I know that Canon, like the other OEMs, is diversifying into these other segments, into these other business units. But even those other business units, if you follow the trail of the money and the revenues that they've done for the last few years, it's not growing. And you got to ask yourself why. What are they doing? And so the reality is, here I am looking at Canon's Financials, and I want to get my pen working here on my sharp board. So let's just look at the office business unit, okay, the print sector. In 2020, they did 1,440,212 million yen, which translates to about $13 billion. In the year 2018, they did 1,868,355 million yen. And folks, here's what's interesting. Let's pay attention to the percentage of decreases in sales from 2018 to 2020. Because from 2018 to 2019, the sales decreased by 6.2%. Nobody was wearing a mask in 2018. There was no global pandemic. Canon's sales dropped 6.2%. I'm not saying this in a way to dig at them. I'm just saying it's a reality. Their sales dropped before the pandemic was even a pandemic, right? And folks, that means that from the year 2019 to 2020, their sales dropped 17.8%. We could all expect that. Most of the OEMs had disastrous, you know, drop in their sales between 2019 and 2020, the global pandemic. But if you put those 2 years together, you know, that's a 24% decline. From 18 to 20, that's a 24% decline in revenue. This is big stuff, folks. Now, we know that over the last year, all the OEMs, for the most part, and even some of my friends at the document image scale, these dealers are trying to figure out how many people are going to go to work, how many people are going to go to the office, how many people are going to work from home. They're trying to figure out the future of the business based on how many people go to the office. Folks, the reality of it is our business has been declining, whether they're all in the office, whether they go home, or whether they go to the beach. It doesn't really matter. The industry's in damn decline. And it's not just going to miraculously start growing again. You're going to see some growth where people have consolidation, where they buy up somebody and there's new money going into that infrastructure. But it's not growth. At best, it's displacement growth. But even what you sell is going to decline. Gosh, don't we all know that by now? So ladies and gentlemen, let me close off this screen here and go to my next one. So think about this. I put together 11 years worth of top line revenue for Canon and their net income attributed to Canon Inc. So what was the percentage of revenue for their net income and what was their top line revenue? Well, folks, for 2020, the top line for the whole company, let me get my pen working here again. The top line revenue for the whole company, okay, was 3,160,243,000,000 yen. And folks, that's like $28 billion, okay? That's it, $28 billion. If you go back to 2011, okay, 2011 we were at 3,557,433,000,000 yen. And now we're at 3,160,243 yen. So we're not past where we were 11 years ago, right? So even though we've had 11 years, hell, the pandemic, that just was 1 year, 15 months of our life. But we didn't grow in 11 years. So let's look at where we did grow over the 11 years. Folks, we went from 3,557,000,000,000 to the next year we were 3,479,000,000,000. Then we went up a little bit. We had 107% growth in the year 2013 from 2012. Then in 2014 we were flat. We didn't grow at all. Then we had a little bit of growth, like 2% growth. Wasn't a big home run, right? 102%. And then what do we do? In 2016 we dropped. We were only 89.5%. 2017, we picked up a little bit. We were 119%. Then we dropped to 96.9%. Then we dropped to 90.9%. This last year, we dropped to 87.9%. Dropping. Our best year ever. It was 2017, okay, over the last 10 years. And that was 4,080,000,000,015 yen, okay? So our best year ever in the last 11 years was only about $37 billion. We want to do 40 billion by the year 2025. We got to pick up a whole lot of billions from 28 billion to 40 billion. We only got, 4.5 years to do it. Let's talk about this net income attributed to Canon. They want that number to be 8%. Where are they getting the 8%? They've never had 8%. If you go back to 2011, that was their best year ever. 7.0%. 2012, 6.5%, 6.2%. Well, they went up, but not even a percent. They went up to 6.8%. Then they went back down a whole percent, 5.8%. Then they went back down even more than 1% to 4.4%. They got a little back to 5.9%. 6.4%. Folks, it's getting really bad now. They went from 6.4% in 2018 to 3.5% in 2019. What happened? 2020, we all know, we had some problems with the global pandemic, but they're at 2.6%. Their aspirations to be at 8%. Well, if I was a shareholder, I'd be saying, how the hell are you going to do that? What are you going to do? I know that they can't tell you everything in these financials. I'm sure they have strategic plans. Of course, they're not going to share those. But folks, I don't get the sense they're thinking like consolidation. I don't get the sense they're thinking of alliances with new people. I don't get the sense from any of the OEMs about that. It's a little bit scary to say the least. But, here's something else I want to share with you as I was going through these financials that I saw. Kind of interesting. But, all these organizations have compilation reports. They have write-ups. And here's something that came out kind of glaring at me. Concentrations of credit risk. At December 31st, 2020 and 2019, one customer accounted for approximately 8% and 10% of consolidated trade receivables, respectively. Although Canon does not expect that the customer will fail to meet its obligations, Canon is potentially exposed to concentrations of credit risk if the customer failed to perform according to the terms of the contract. Folks, 8 to 10%, one customer. Is that one customer in the print sector, that office business sector? If it is it HP? I mean, we know HP buys a whole lot of stuff from Canon. Is it in their medical sector? Where's this customer at? Who is this customer? And folks, if it was 10% in 2019, and let's just hypothetically say it is HP, and then in 2020 they were only 8%. Is that insinuating that HP's buying less from Canon? Obviously, if it's HP, I don't think Canon has to worry about paying them. But could this be telling a story that HP continues to buy less from them? If they continue to buy less from them, then how is Canon going to increase their sales for their aspirations for the year 2025? Folks, it's just some things to think about and ask some questions. And quite honestly, no one asks these OEMs any of these questions. We just let them tell us whatever they want to tell us. And you know, most of the industry's media will just publish, like I said, nonsensical press releases about things that do nothing for a declining industry. And we need to pay attention to this decline. We need to be looking at 11-year track records. You know, a lot of dealers, they're probably saying to themselves, think about some of these private equity groups. Oh, we're growing. Hey, we grew last year. Oh, you didn't grow. You bought more business. That's declining. I've been screaming about that for a long time. So the OEMs, we know they have to consolidate. We know they better start consolidating quickly because we've spent the last 15 months, I don't know what the hell we're doing. And the only one that's even made any kind of announcements was Xerox, where they split the company into 3 different separate companies. And I'm just curious, you know, what these other folks are going to do. Because I'm afraid a lot of the people in the Document Image channel look through these financials and they think, oh, everything's going to be fine. Look at Canon. They're going to raise their revenue by $10 billion by the year 2025. Oh, we'll be able to do that. Well, is that revenue all going to come out of their medical business unit, their industrial unit? Where's it going to come from? Folks, you know, there's a lot of aspirations for a lot of folks around this production and inkjet labels. And I'm just thinking to myself, we're basing a whole entire industry on like 2% of it. Even if labels take off, it's not going to be anything the Document Imaging channel is going to replace the lost revenue from business print. We have got to start thinking about business print and the effects that this evolutionary event called a global pandemic had on business print. Label printing? Okay, yeah, people are mailing stuff. You're going to have label prints going out. You're going to have a lot of industrial print. The Document Imaging channel doesn't sell industrial print. Dealers don't sell industrial print. They sell some production print. Quite honestly, a lot of them do it so dysfunctionally, they bastardize that entire market. We're giving the crap away. And industrial print, this high-end inkjet web press stuff, this is a whole different animal. It's going to take a whole different business acumen to do it. But we better start thinking about our business print. How is this decline going to affect our business as the business print continues to decline? How does Canon or all these other OEMs offset all those revenues and profits they made from the business print as they build out these other diversifications? How does a dealer take their profits from their business print and diversify into things like IT? How long do they have to do that? Because they got to protect now, they got to protect their print business like never before. They've got to control their costs. There's so many things and so many disciplines that have to take place in a declining marketplace. And if we keep fooling ourselves that we're in some kind of, growth pattern, and we're going to hear it, I'm telling you, you're going to see the OEMs coming out there. We grew last quarter. We're killing it. We're having all kinds of fun. By the way, we saw HP's financials last quarter. I think they threw a parade for Eureka and the team saying, oh, everything's fantastic over at HP. We grew our revenue and our profits are growing. You know what? I'm going to look at those financials. I'll put my spin on it in the next few days. But ladies and gentlemen, the industry's not growing. The industry's declining. And we better start figuring out how we're going to change our business to live in this decline profitably as we transition to other products and services. Lots to think about, my friends, but we all know this. Status quo is the killer of all that will be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see you all tomorrow.